This is the lock I made for the front door of a bracket clock. The actual bolt works in the same way as the cupboard lock, so that's the same. It's held on by these two plates here. That one replaces this loop, and that one replaces the front edge because it's not bent up. It works by that passing through that little staple, and when you turn the lock it just passes behind and holds it shut. So the lock itself is let into the front door on the inside, and then the key passes through the front, and the staple is hammered into the case there. This is a genuine lock off an antique bracket clock. The difference is between this one and the one I've made is that the spring, which is there, is fixed to the brass plate itself rather than on the bolt, which is there. It's not easy to see because it's quite dirty. So the way it's been done is a piece of spring steel has been cut that shape, and the brass has been cut out like that, and that section there fits into that groove, and these two bits here are punched in to grip it, and the tail end pushes down on the bolt to hold it down so that it doesn't slide about. So I've made a copy of this, but the spring, rather than cutting spring steel, which is quite hard, you'd have to anneal it and mess around heat treating it. What I've done is I've fixed a piece of brass on the end. So the way I've gone about it is, that's the spring steel, which is a piece of clock spring, and this is the brass, which I've just bent over. I've put that in there, put a bit of lead solder on there first, popped it in and crushed it in the vise, and then I've heated it up to melt the solder, and then I've just filed it up so it's nice and square, and then all I need to do is cut a little notch out there and there so that it sits at a fixed point. And I found that was quite an easy way of doing it. Clock spring's easy enough to get hold of. So there's the plate. That just sits in there like that. So these are the components for the lock. The back plate is 3/4 of an inch wide and 2 1/8 long. So I'm just fixing the front bridge on. Now I've inked up the bolt so I can mark it out. I've also riveted on the two bridges and the pin so that things don't move around too much. So with the bolt over to the right, so it's unlocked, I put the key in on its post and just mark the tip of the flag. Then I move it over halfway and just lift it up about 1/2 mil, and then I put the key in at 12 o'clock, just holding it steady, mark the tip, then move it over to the left so it's locked, move the key round and mark the tip again. And when you join those 3 marks up, you get the line which needs to be cut out. So I won't go all the way up to that line. I'll be able to fine tune it afterwards with needle files to make sure it works. It's easier to take it off, you can't put it back on. So. Right. The front bit's okay, but I still need to take a bit more off the back. I also need to take a bit off around this section here and that bit there, just so I can get the key on, because it's actually fouling the key, because the pin's quite close to the bolt. So I'll take a bit more off there, a bit off there, and a bit off there. So I'll finish the cutout. It's a bit of an odd shape, but that's because I've actually put the pin in a fraction too high, but it still works. It doesn't really make any difference. So now it works fine. That's all there is to it. Just needs the spring riveting on and the back's filing off, and that's done. So I've riveted the spring on and filed the back off, and to just get the graining straight, if you put a piece of abrasive paper and a straight edge, just a piece of wood, and rub it against it, it stops it twisting as you're sanding or going in a slight arc, and then you get a nice straight grained finish, and that's it, completed. Normally when you're making a lock, it's because there's one that's missing, so it's already got the hole cut out. So the way you go about it is you would measure the plate size, cut a plate, drill the holes for the screws and fit it, and then you'd mark from the front where the pin would be through the escutcheon, and then mark the keep for the hole in the plate. And once you've done that, then you can start making all the other bits by just marking them out and working it out. The key should be fairly central between the two bridges. As long as there's enough meat at the top of the bolt when you cut everything out, it doesn't really matter where the pin is, as long as it lines up on there. So it obviously worked with the original one, so you know you can actually work out the size of the bolt. This keeps different to the one I made before, which is just like a staple. I think that is the original one. I'm not too sure. It might be a replacement. But it depends. Some were like that and some were like this. This type of lock was also used on early dial clocks. This is one that I made before. So I made a lock, but I made it very thin so it would fit in flush. But normally they would be mounted on like that, and there'd be a recess in the surround here, so that the lock would fit into there. And they were also used on the brass ones like this, and again they were just soldered on in the same way. The locks are now finished. I've aged them up to make them look like they've been there a while. You don't want to look too new. There's the back one. That's the case finished.